Shalom Aleichem. Okay, we're moving on to the next Mishnah. Thank you for your patience. We are on Perek Shlishi, the third Perek of Pirkei Avos, Mishnah Vav. Rabbi Chalafta ish kfar Chananya Omer, Asara sheyoshvim v'oskim b'Torah. When you have 10 people who are sitting and they are delving into Torah, Shechina shruya b'neihem, then Hashem's presence dwells amongst them. Shene'emar Elohim nitzav ba'adat el. U'minayin afilu chamisha. And how do you know that's true even if there's 5 people? Shene'emar va'agudato al eretz yisada. We have to explain what that pasuk is exactly. We'll get to as we do our second round. U'minayin afilu shoshan. How do you know that Hashem's presence dwells even if there's only 3 people? Shene'emar bekerev Elohim yishpot. Amongst the judges, Hashem judges, and we know that there's 3 judges for Dinei Mamanos. Ominayin afilu shnayim, and how do we know that even if there's 2 people? Shneimar, az nidberu yirei Hashem ish el reihu v'yakshev Hashem v'yishma. Then the people who have yirat shamayim will speak one to his friend, and Hashem will listen and he will hear. Ominayin afilu achad, and how do we know that HaKadosh Baruch Hu dwells even amongst one person who's learning Torah? Shneimar b'kol makom asher azkir et shmi, anywhere where I will mention my name, Avo elecha, I will come there, or berachtich, and I will bless you. So this Mishnah, it's unclear exactly what the chiddush is in this Mishnah beyond what we said, if you remember a couple of Mishnayos ago. 3 Mishnayos ago, we had the associate of Rabbi Chalafta, Rabbi Chananya himself, and he said, Shtaim shoshim be'em b'neim Torah, it's a moshav leitzim. And he brings the same pasuk. And then also there he said, how do you know it's 2, even if it's 1? And it brings a different pasuk, Yeshev badad v'yidom ki natal alav. What's Rabbi Chalafta coming and adding in his statement? Another question, maybe a broader question is, once we've already got down to the principle that one person, Hashem, is with him, then why do you need to say 10 and 5 and 3 and 2? That's not a chiddush anymore. We have a chiddush of 1. It could be lo zu afzu. It could be not only 10, not only 5, not only 3, not only 2, but maybe it's teaching something a little more profound. Otherwise, it could just go straight to the end and just say, how do you know that even if one person is learning Torah, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was with him, and bring the pasuk right at the end? That's question number 2. Question number 3 is a detailed question. A diuk in the last pasuk. The last pasuk, which is talking about when one person comes down, grammatically, it should have been written differently. It should have been written, "B'kol makom asher tazkir et shmi." We're saying here, whenever a person learns Torah, meaning whenever we say Hashem's name, Torah is an expression of Hashem's name. If you read the introduction of the Ramban to the Torah, he writes that the entire Torah is one long name of Hashem. So whenever we mention Hashem's name, that's where Hashem comes down and blesses us. But what does the pasuk mean? Whenever Hashem mentions his own name, I will mention my own name, then he will come and bless us. So what do we do to deserve that? Hashem has mentioned his own name. It should have said, tazkir, that you will mention my name, I will bless you. What does it mean, azkir, I will mention you? And the final question, which is really the biggest one of all, often we spoke about this at the beginning when we started learning Pirkei Avos, there are 2 categories of questions when you learn a Mishnah or any Torah source. There's a detailed question, which is why did he use this word, not that word? Why this order, not that order? But there's the really big questions, the really vital ones. For example, what is going on here, bichlal? What does it mean that Hashem's Shechina comes down when we learn Torah? Isn't Hashem everywhere at all times? Is there more Hashem when we learn and less Hashem when we don't learn? What does it mean that Hashem's Shechina dwells amongst us only when we learn Torah? And it sounds like not only that, but there's different levels of Hashem's Shechina coming down. 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We need to understand what the concept, and this is the broad question, what does the concept of the Shechina dwelling amongst us actually mean, and what are the different levels it's referring to here, the 10, 5. Okay. So I'm going to start with the Ruach Chaim. The Ruach Chaim, Rav Chaim Velozhin, he mentions 3 points, 2 which I want to quote today. The first one is the more major one. The Ruach Chaim says the following. So I'll say the more detailed one first, then I'll say the major one at the end. So we'll finish off with that. the diuk that we made right at the end of the Mishnah, Asher Tazkir, it should have said Asher Tazkir and says Asher Azkir. That's the question that Ruach Chaim asks. And he gives a very interesting concept. He says, in truth, and this is teaching us about the principle of Torah to begin with. In truth, it would be a little arrogant of us to presume that we can learn Torah. Torah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mind. It's trying to understand HaKadosh Baruch Hu in his essence. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's thoughts of how he decided to create the world are written down in the Torah. For us to come and learn Torah is unfathomable. It's infinite. It's way beyond us. We have a finite mind. The Torah is infinite wisdom of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Technically, it's impossible for us to learn that. If you wish to go and research any element of nature, that makes sense. Nature is a wisdom of this world, and we have a mind of this world. But if you're coming to learn Torah, it's the finite trying to understand the infinite. It's an impossible thing for us to do. So really, learning Torah is something impossible for us. Now, if you'll say, well, it is impossible, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu then made it possible for us, well, then we shouldn't get any credit for that. Then HaKadosh Baruch Hu is like a parent who, when he sees that a child can't do something for himself, the child then takes over and does it on behalf of the child. You don't want to give the child credit for that. It was the parent who did it. But here we see a great chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In essence, we aren't able to understand. Now, I want to be clear at what I'm saying. There are two ways of understanding Torah. There's a way of understanding Torah where you're learning it like you're learning any archaeological site, any wisdom, any law. I remember once when I was talking to someone not religious, they were walking past. I approached them, hello, who are you? What are you doing here? They go, we heard this is an institution of higher learning. Wanted to just speak to someone and see what it's about. Okay, I speak English. So what do you study here? So I was trying to get my mind of trying to explain how to study without using any Hebrew or Yiddish words. And it's quite a challenge. Eventually, so I just gave different examples of things we were learning to say, so you're basically learning law. It's law. I said, yes, it is law. They go, but it's ancient law from the Mesopotamian era with Babylonian influences. I said, not really. Really, it expresses itself as law, but it's God's wisdom as expressed in this world. And that was way beyond it was way beyond my explaining, but it was way beyond my be able to explain it and then be able to fathom. Meaning, yes, the external level of Torah is law. It's law of agriculture, it's law of damages, it's tort law of property. There's a lot of elements of law, but essentially when you think about it, what should we be doing? Should we be meditating and disconnecting from the world to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? That's not our role as the Jewish people. Our role of as the Jewish people is HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, in a sense, disconnected, elevated way beyond this world. His goal, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made himself a goal that he wanted to be expressed V'shachanti itam betoch tumatam, as we read in the Parsha a couple of weeks ago. Hashem wanted to dwell with us in the tum, meaning in the lowest elements of the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted to be expressed, and he made the Jewish nation the medium through which HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinite Shekhinah will be able to express itself in this world. So we are, in a sense, the go-between. We are the agents of Hashem, which enable that wisdom, that higher wisdom, to be able to express down here in this world. Let's try and elaborate on that concept a little bit. So as far as answering this question is concerned, it's meduyak to say, B'kol asher azkir et shmi. It doesn't say tazkir because it's not the Jewish people who are figuring out the Torah. Ultimately, any insights we ever get, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is enabling us to understand. It's Hashem who's azkir et shmi. Hashem is the one who's explaining it. The chesed that Hashem does for us is that he enabled us to be the go-between, that in a sense, it looks as if we're expressing it in this world, but only to the degree that Hashem enables. I want to give a mashal for this. There are certain chidushim that people, Talmidei Chachamim, make in different eras. And when you ask yourself, why was that chidush expressed in this era? Why didn't the earlier generations of the Rishonim, why weren't they able to come out without chidush and they had to leave it as a tzarach iyun? And then Talmidei Chachamim, many eras later, are able to come out without chidush. But you see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu only allows things to be revealed at certain times. Right now, as we speak, Yeshivat HaKotel is running a Vayichan, like they did the same thing a few weeks ago on Shavuos. On the Shavuos they did once, now they're doing one again. Right now, as we speak, anyone who wants to finish this shiur, you can go straight into a 1-hour animated tour of the Beis HaMikdash, and then immediately after that, Rabbi Akiva Tatz, that's where I'll be. You're welcome to join along with me. So now, how does the Vayichan work? So hear this mashal very well. There are different shiurim that are at different times, and if you try and it won't work. Recorded. In theory, that wisdom is already out there, but it's not able to be accessed at a given time because the time hasn't yet come for you to access it. Amazing mashal, which is happening as we speak. So, HaKadosh Baruch Hu has levels of wisdom that he wishes to bring down into the world, which is Hashem Shechina. The Shechina is another word for saying the relationship that we can have, the Jewish people can have with Hashem in this world. It's not Hashem in his essence, rather it's the relationship we can have with Hashem in this world. And this is an important point to note. There's 3 elements of Hashem, right? Bear with me on this. There's HaKadosh Baruch Hu in his essence, which he will never reveal. That's above where we are. And not able to understand that. That's beyond us. Then there's elements of HaKadosh Baruch Hu which have already been revealed in the world. And that's when you learn Torah and you learn Chidushim that have already been learned. That's expression of Hashem that already exists in the world. And that's the Shekhinah which has already expressed itself. Then at any given time, there's a new area of Shekhinah, a new expression of Hashem, which the Jews who are alive at the time, not right now, me and everyone here who's listening, there's new elements, if you like, of the Shekhinah, of Hashem's revelation that he's willing to express himself. Don't think that all the revelation of Hashem came down on Mount Sinai. It didn't. Throughout the 40 years, there was more expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that came down. At Aravot Moav, more expression came down. In the different eras of the Nevi'im, more expression came down. And even when Nevuah stopped, through Torah learning, more elements of Hashem's Shekhinah in the world is revealed again and again. So, just like that example of the Vayichan, there are certain boxes which if you click on them, nothing will happen because the time hasn't come. Hashem didn't allow that element of his Shekhinah to come into the world yet. However, if you live in any given era and you press on a box, meaning you put in a melus to learn Torah at a given time, then you could be able to bring into the world an understanding, a revelation of Hashem in this world, which wasn't accessible to the early generations. So it doesn't mean that you're cleverer than the Rishonim, or the Gaonim, or the Tanaim or Maraim. No, it's not. It's just that that element of Torah wasn't accessible yet. And in every era, HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes different elements or levels of Torah accessible, which gives us a lot of hope. Because you don't have to think that earlier generations are infallible, and if they didn't say anything, it's impossible for a next generation to bring it out. But rather, HaKadosh Baruch Hu enabled different parts of Torah to be left for each generation for us to bring that out. Now, why can't, the question was just asked, why can't later generations argue on earlier generations? The answer to that is, we're not saying that new points will come which will conflict with earlier points. Not at all. Each one builds on the next. Meaning whatever came into fruition of the Hashem Shekhinah of the world, of the revelation of Torah in the world, that's true, and that's point number 1. But it's a little bit like, if you go to hear a very complicated topic, then they'll explain it in very basic terms, very broad terms, and then they'll say, okay, if that's all clear, and then they'll explain it in another level, another round, with more details and more nuances, and then is that clear to everyone? Yes, okay. Now, it's not that that contradicts the previous one. On the contrary, it brings it out, it makes it even more clear. So when the Rishonim speak, they speak in very broad terms. Sometimes we're able to fathom of what they were alluding to and bring it out in their words. Sometimes even they didn't know what they were saying, meaning, of course, they knew what they were saying in a broad sense, but even they weren't yet privy to all the elements and all the applications and all the details that would come out of it. But with Ruach HaKodesh, almost, I mean, with Chochmah, but Ruach HaKodesh, they'll say it in a way which is broad enough that when later generations wish to say things, it won't contradict with what they were saying. It will be a more detailed explanation of what they were saying. Did they know all that interpretation? Not necessarily. That's the famous story, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with, when Rabbi Akiva was giving a shiur And Moshe Rabbeinu was upset that what was going to be with the Torah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought him down into a generation of Rabbi Akiva. He sat on the 8th row and he was listening to Rabbi Akiva speak. And Rabbi Akiva said a chidush which Moshe Rabbeinu didn't understand. And the Chachamim there said to Rabbi Akiva, where do you know that from? And he said, Halach ala Moshe Sinai. And he said, and Moshe Rabbeinu was alleviated, he was calmed. And what does that mean? Meaning if it was Halach ala Moshe Sinai, then how did Moshe Rabbeinu not know it? Surely, if Rabbi Akiva is saying something in the name of Moshe, he should know it. But that's exactly this idea. Moshe knew it in the very broad sense, in the very klali sense, but it hadn't yet been developed and explained and expressed. By the time it came to Rabbi Akiva, he was saying something, the core of that idea came all the way back from Moshe Rabbeinu. But even Moshe didn't know it yet. Not that Moshe didn't know it in the sense that it was not true, and not that Moshe didn't know it in the sense it contradicted. Rather, Moshe knew it in the core basic idea, but only with time and development did it become clear. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, yes, that's exactly the idea that I had, although much more clear and expressed. Okay, so what is the, so we started with a very detailed question. Why does it say tazkir and not azkir? And now we're getting an understanding that anything that we express throughout any generation, it's not really us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He just gives us credit by giving us the ability in any given era to express those ideas. Thank you, Hashem, for giving us that opportunity. Now, let's go to our much broader question. What is Shechina? What is the concept of Shechina? And what does it mean that we bring out Shechina through our Torah learning? So we've touched on that now, and let's explain a little more. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of course, is everywhere at every given time. He's Malach kol haaretz kavodo. If you want a pasuk to prove that point. Hashem fills the world in every place at any given time. However, that doesn't mean that he's accessible to us. Just because HaKadosh Baruch Hu was willing everything into existence, it doesn't mean that at that given time, we're able to recognize that it's Hashem who's doing that and to be able to feel and appreciate him. Like the beautiful word that they say in the name of the Kotzker Rebbe, they asked the Kotzker Rebbe, where is God? And he answered, wherever you let him in. Oh, I love that word, the Kotzker Rebbe, because it's so true. People say, where's Hashem? Where's Hashem? And the answer is, he's right here. But are you opening your heart to be able to feel him and to express him? When you have conversations with people, sometimes the conversation is on such a superficial level. All you talk about is the weather, and you talk about external things. What did you eat and what did you eat? And even if you try and talk in learning, but it's still on a very, very superficial level. It's what did he say and where did he get it from? And what does he say and where did he get it from? But there's no inner understanding of anything. It's all external intellectual details, but without the opening the heart. You could have a chavrusa who you learn with for a year, a full year, and you have no idea who they are, no clue who they are. You came, you sat down, you learned, you discussed all the details, you moved away. What do they like? What do they hate? What's their personality? What are their traits? What's their strengths? What's their weaknesses? How will they be as a husband, as a chavrusa? How will they be as a father? You could have no idea. Now, on the one hand, there's a mile of it. You're able to sit down and you're able to focus and you're able to have learning, and that's fantastic. But on the other hand, there's something lacking where all you know about them is that detailed discussion without an understanding of what their unique perspective of Torah is, what unique contribution they have to Torah is. It's like that with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You could relate to Hashem on a very external level. He's the God who took us out of Egypt, a detail. Because he took us out of Egypt, he gave us commandments, where tefillin, a detail. What do you feel about him? What do I feel about him? I don't know, I never thought about that. It's very interesting. Let's say, lo aleinu, lo aleichem. Let's say someone passes away. Now, you could have a husband and a wife role who could take, I'm giving that just as an example because it's more typical for men and women, but it could be true for the other way around as well. So let's say you have an example of the husband role. What's the husband's immediate response? Okay, there's the laws of the Shiva, there's the details of the burial. We have to make sure this is here by that time, and where are we going to be sitting, and who's going to phone. We have to use Zoom now, so we have to open a Zoom account, and who's going to manage the Zoom account. Very good. What's the woman doing? She's emotionally feeling the pain of what just happened. Two very different responses. Which is better? Well, it depends. If a child is just knocked down by a motorbike off his bicycle, then it's not very good to be emotional right now. That's going to be a very bad response. You're going to need the male mindset of saying, call the ambulance. Who's going to stand here and make sure that no other cars are coming? Call Hatzalah. You need someone very detail-oriented. That's what you need then. The mother's role is going to be much, much more effective when later on and everything is taken care of, standing by the child's side, giving the child empathy, giving the child care, and then the details aren't relevant anymore, but you need that. So you see both roles are very important. However, if you only ever relate to HaKadosh Baruch Hu on the external level, whilst you are doing a mitzvah, it's not really bringing in a relationship with Hashem. You're not going to be able to say, I feel Hashem in my life. You're going to be able to say, I am loyal and devoted to Hashem, but not necessarily an experience. So let's go back to that Kotzgrover's idea. Where is Hashem? So someone who's detail-oriented will say, the Beis HaMikdash. Or he'll say, Arba Amos Shel Halacha. He's in the shul. Or he'll say, a posuk, where I know the answer, Melo Kol Haaretz Kvodo. That was it. I knew the answer to that question. And he'll go and see a beautiful scenery. And you know what he'll say? He'll say, what posuk is supposed to say now? Oh yeah. Ma Rabu Ma'asecha Hashem. That's the one you're supposed to say when you look at beautiful scenery. Now, is he looking at the scenery? Is he appreciating HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world? No, he's saying, which posuk are you supposed to say when you look at the scenery? It's Ma Rabu. Got it. Very good. I know the right posuk you're supposed to say. There you're losing the relationship. You're losing the connection. So the Kotzgrover said, where is Hashem where you let him in? So what is Shechina? Shechina isn't where Hashem is, because Hashem is everywhere all the time. Shechina is where we are able to appreciate Hashem. And there's a subjective and an objective here. There's an objective which we started with, which is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu allows different elements of his self to be revealed in every generation. That's the objective. There's also subjective, how much you're opening yourself up to be able to experience that element of Hashem in your life. So far, so good. So we've had our major question answered. What is Shechina? What is the idea of Shechina? Hashem always dwells. Hashem is always present. However, according to how much you open yourself up, you'll be able to relate to it. Now, what's the Chiddush of our Mishnah as a unique Chiddush? And this is the Chiddush here. That it's not on or off button, but rather, according to the degree that there are more people, and we're going to explain what this means in a moment, according to the degree there are more people, there is more opportunity, more ability to have Hashem as experiential in your life. You're able to tap into Hashem, experience Hashem with more breadth, with more depth, with more emotion, with more experience, with more connection. Your relationship with Hashem will be more detailed when there's more people involved. That's what Rabbi Chalafta is coming to say. I'm going to read it and I'm going to try and explain it. Rabbi Chalafta ish kfar Chananya omer, asarash yoshvim v'oskim Torah. If you don't have one person, you have 10 people sitting and learning together, and the learning of Torah is bringing out Hashem in the world. It's bringing out a relationship with Hashem in the world. But there's something about having more people together, and it brings the Shechina b'neim, as the pasuk says. Now, this pasuk is usually used in the context of tefillah, the idea that you need to have a minyan. We're expanding it here. Rabbi Chalafta is expanding it here and saying that it also applies to Torah learning. Hashem is present, ba'adat kel, when there's Jews there. Now, if you notice, and the Gemara says this regarding tefillah, we're going to say also regarding Torah, when 10 people make out to be together and sit and learn together, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes even before them. As the pasuk says, Elokim nitzav, Hashem is already standing, ba'adat kel, when there's a congregation of people, meaning Hashem comes first. When Hashem sees that Jews want to come together and connect through Torah learning, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu already precedes and he stands there. So if we were to have a Beit Cham, for example, and I were to know there were at least 9 people coming, then even before those 9 people have entered the room, if we're going to be learning Torah together, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is already present on a higher level, meaning it's already, Kiviyachol, set the tone for more Kedusha and Shechina and being able to appreciate Hashem through that Torah learning. Meaning if you would learn Torah by yourself, you'd be able to come to some level of relationship with Hashem. But by designating you're going to be learning with 10 people, the ability of how much depth you'll be able to feel Hashem in your life will be heightened. And so too with 5. And look at the Rambam there to see why 5 is the word Aguda. And so to the number 3, which is from the Judges. And so to the number 2, when Jews speak to one another. And so to the number 1. Now, I want to say one point of understanding of where this idea comes from. There's a concept of a crowd. And when you're with a crowd, it brings out a koach, it brings out a potential, it awakens the potential which is within you, which you wouldn't be able to bring out by yourself. There's a dynamic in a group which only in that group can you bring out and awaken a koach that's within a person that you wouldn't be able to bring out if the person was just by himself, right? You see this in the negative sense when, let's say, there's a game taking place and there's crowds or there's a riot taking place, if anyone's ever heard of such a concept. And the way that people would behave in a riot is not the way they would behave when they're by themselves. I'll just tell you a funny story. Exactly 15 years ago, almost to the day, I think it was a Bet or Gimel Av, there was a rally, tefillah, on behalf of Gush Katif. This is quite a funny story. And many of the yeshiva went down. It was in the south, by the Baba Sali's kever, and Nitivot, and there was a big tour. Rav Blachman was there. He said that anyone doesn't come there, and he said harsh things about them. There was a lot of people coming there to daven, and he said Porosh Metzibur. He just quoted what the Rambam says, but he made it very clear that people should be there and daven there. So we were all there davening. Now after the davening, there was different rabbanim were speaking, and there was singing, and there was speaking, and there was kind of encouragement, things like that. So anyway, there were these two non-religious Israelis who were doing a documentary on the topic. And they were looking for someone who spoke English. And somehow someone pointed to me, and why am I always involved in these things? And they said to me, would you be willing to just like do whatever you're doing, but just like speak it through with us on the camera so that we can like get more of a background understanding? I was very keen. I'm always looking for opportunities for things like this. I wouldn't go look for them out of my way, but if I'm doing something I believe in anyway, and there's a chance to like learn a new experience, I'm always keen. Once someone used my name on a credit card, and then I was being called to a court, and my wife said like, oh my gosh, like just pay the money even though you didn't spend it, just like to get this out. I said no, like I'm not going to pay money that I didn't owe, but to go to the court is really interesting. Like who knows what's going to happen there? Could learn new experiences. Baruch Hashem, they dropped it in the end, but I missed an opportunity, you know. Anyway, so they were filming me, and I was standing a little bit out of the crowd. I was standing back so that they could film me. And when the different rabbanim were speaking and singing different songs, so then I was joining in and I was singing along and I was saying different phrases, but it was really off because when you have a large crowd of people over here singing a song and you have like a one lone individual over here singing a song, it doesn't go well together. Anyone who's tried to do a party on Zoom will have experienced that. You could be watching lots of individual people trying to sing, but it doesn't have that same vibe as when you have a room full of people together. So they said to me, look, we know you want you here because we want to see you, but it's not working because you're jumping and dancing and singing by yourself. It doesn't have that same feel. Just do what you would naturally do. Go into the crowd, and if we catch you, we catch you. If not, not. It was a totally different feel of singing and dancing over there and singing and dancing within the crowd. So you get the understanding that it brings out a koach within you, which is totally different. Now, why, when you're with a group of non-Jewish people or a non-Jewish ideal, then it brings out often violence, and it brings out pushing and shoving, and it brings out other different types of ideals come out. But when it brings out, like when there was the Siyum Shas in America, in that MetLife Stadium where it was, right, then everyone was talking about the big Kiddush Hashem that took place, about how everyone behaved properly and appropriately, which you would always assume that's the case, but apparently in America, it's not always the case that people behave appropriately. So why is it that it brought out a different koach? And what is the koach of the tzibur, and why is Torah different? So I want to explain an idea that I was thinking of. I think it makes sense to me. You're welcome to find sources or challenge me on it. So the idea of a koach, of a tzibur, goes like this. When you have one person by himself, then he's only the koach of who he is. However, when you meet two people, then they look for the common ground, or they look for what they're able to speak about and discuss. When they find what they can speak about and discuss, then he brings his part, then he brings his part, and they can put those two parts together, and then they can bring something much greater. When a third person comes in and the first two people say, well, I've got my part and you've got your part, now you bring in your part, and then not where each one of them is, but in the middle place where each of them are sharing their ideas, then something even greater comes out, and something of a synergy is formed where each one is giving their common ground of a common idea and adding in parts until that space in between them, that place where they all overlap, becomes heightened until it becomes a beautiful, beautiful structure, something that any of them individually wouldn't be able to create. Now, what are they talking about? Well, it depends. If they're coming to talk about American politics, then it's likely that this one will say his point, and he'll say his point, and he'll punch him. And that will be, the round one. Then the third person will come, and he says, I don't agree with you, and he'll punch him. And then each one will be coming and there'll be a big ball and a fight and a ruckus, because what's their common denominator? What's the basic part of what they're all saying? They're all saying, I want my rights, I want my rights, I don't agree with you, and I don't agree with you. And the basic common denominator is fighting, friction, my rights, your rights. It's not coming with a common ground of coming to find a deep ideal, because there may even not be a great ideal. I mean, the more broad you get, the less in common you're going to have with those people. Only when you have two people who are on the same wavelength, oh, you also studied a course in such and such, so did I, let's talk about that, then you can find mutual ground. But the more you take more and more random people, it's going to get harder and harder, because their overlapping ground, that middle area doesn't exist, and therefore there's going to be fighting and friction. However, when you're talking about Torah, Vayichan, oh, there we go, bring that back to that point again. What is Vayichan Sham Neged Ahar? What does that concept mean? It means that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Shechina came down on Mount Sinai, there was a central force which all of the Jews had a chelek in, and when you have all of Am Yisrael together, their unique bond that holds them all together is the Torah. Meaning, we don't have to find, oh, you're from Monsey, I'm also from Monsey. Oh, you're from Swaziland, I'm also from Swaziland. Great, we have some common ground. No. You have Torah as your life, whether you're aware of it or not, it's always ingrained. So do I have Torah in my life. But wait, I only have one chelik in Torah. What chelik in Torah do you have? Ah, wow. Let's put those pieces together. Jews who come together to learn Torah, it's bringing out an achdus. It's bringing out a unity, which is Hashem. It's bringing out the Torah, because that's their common ground. If you could have Jews who are coming together to talk about a different topic, and it won't bring that out. It will bring out eventually friction if you have enough people arguing. But when you have Torah as your goal, the Torah is a center, Marbeh Talmid Chachamim, Marbeh Shalom Ba'olam. Why is it Marbeh Shalom? Because you have more elements of the truth, more understanding that comes together, and then each one brings out their unique chelek, and it brings out Torah. So here's the chiddush of the Mishnah. Obviously, when you have lots and lots and lots of Jews together, that's obvious, that's going to be the Shechina. Because where does the Shechina dwell? When there's 600,000 Jews or 20,000 Jews, when there's enough Jews who can come together to represent Am Yisrael. What happens when you only have individual Jews coming together? What happens if you only have 10? A basic number of 10. The Maharal, if you have time and you want to enjoy yourself, the Maharal goes at length to explain what the number 10 represents, all the different times the number 10 comes up, and why not number 10 here, and it's beautiful. But that's not for this idea. So if you have the number 10, it's already a basic number of Jews, the minimum number which for a minyan can hold together. Can that also bring Shechina down? Or is that too few? You would see them as individuals. No, there too it can bring down. And what if it's 5? And what if it's 3? And what if it's 2? And what if it's 1? Meaning 1, there's no common ground. I mean, there's no discussion. There's no overlap. So can a Jew bring Shechina when it's only him? And here's the chiddush. By another topic, of course not, because only when you speak to someone else and you bring out the common ground, that's where you go beyond yourself. But with Torah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu in every generation enables you to learn and go beyond the level that you can naturally understand. He gives you a special Shechina. He gives you a special understanding where he elevates you. So you can bring out more depth and more understanding, not only when you have 600,000 Jews together all discussing and bringing that Shechina in the middle, but even ultimate chiddush, even when you are by yourself and you are learning. Now, it's not the ideal, because if you were 10, you could bring out more Shechina. You could bring out a higher level of Shechina, because you have more of that overlap and that unity where all the Jews are together. But even one Jew sitting in his home by himself, who's learning Torah with the goal of coming close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu will come down and dwell on him and enable him to get a high level of understanding. The encouragement that this Mishnah gives us is that no matter what level you're on, the fact that you exist in this generation means you have a unique chelek in Torah. And that unique chelek that you have in Torah means the more Jews you interact with Torah, the more Shechina you'll be able to bring down into the world. But even when you're sitting alone and learning by yourself with the goal of coming close to Hashem, you'll be able to potentially bring down a chiddush which in earlier generations wasn't able to bring down. And even if someone else said it, but you came to understand it, it's called the chiddush. And you'll bring Shechina down, both into your life, but also into the world at large. That's the chiddush of our Mishnah. Ashreinu Am Yisrael. How fortunate are we that we're not just learning another topic to become more intellectually understanding of it, but the learning we do, it taps into Shamayim, taps into bringing more and more revelation, Shechina Kedusha, connection, emotional connection that we can have with Hashem. Where is the HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Wherever you let him in. Yeshar Koach. Enjoy.